Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
These shows are brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation as well as the Compassionate Friends. Well, Heidi, today we're going to talk about a topic that's really interesting, particularly to people in the healthcare field like we are, psychologists, because we're going to talk about peer-to-peer support.
Right.
And there's some questions about peer-to-peer support, so it's going to be interesting talking about it. And if you don't know what peer-to-peer support means for grief and loss, it's having somebody who's had the same loss you've had, where you get together in a group without a paid therapist.
Absolutely, and I think that's really powerful because, you know, if you're with people that have been through your journey and gone through what you've been through, they really get it. They get it, and I don't think they pathologize. And when you say it early on, I feel like I'm going crazy. What's wrong with me? I don't recognize myself. Other people that have had similar losses, they'll say, I've been there. I get it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just dealing with the fact that you've lost your child or your sibling or your grandparent or whoever you've lost.
And when you do go to a therapist, you're kind of a bit of a less than. I mean, they're your less than because they're the person you're paying to help you.
Right.
And when you go to a peer-to-peer support group, it's the whole group looking at the kind of soup together of what's happened. So you're not going to somebody who may not have had the loss. Now, that being said, there are some wonderful grief therapists out there who have had the same kind of loss you've had, and we sometimes suggest people do that, don't we, Heidi?
Yeah, I think in some instances therapy is helpful. I would say to people, and I am a psychologist and I do therapy, but I would say you need to shop around. So your first session with a professional therapist should be about, is this a good fit for me? Am I comfortable with this person? Do I like what this person is saying? And if the answer is no, you don't go back.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll talk to our guests today about their take on when do you go back to a support group, what do they look like, what do they need, and I like it because we've got a male and a female on, so for the guys out there, you're going to be able to have your guy or a guy watching this is going to be able to hear how it would be to go to a peer support group. So Heidi, would you like to introduce our guests?
Yes, I'd love to, because I know both of them very well, so this is going to be a very fun show to do. We are going to talk today with Debbie Rambis and Bob Burt, and I know them because I served with both of them on the National Board of Directors for the Compassionate Friends.
That's right, Debbie. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
So both of them have been very active in the Compassionate Friends at a chapter level and at a national level. And let me tell you a little bit about what else they do. Bob is a Hall of Fame football coach, and he's had a very long career and won a lot of awards for doing this. And it's going to be interesting to talk to him today about coaching and what in coaching would apply to helping one find hope again after loss, because I think there might be some overlap. So he has spoken to over 200,000 students about student suicide prevention. And he does his work in honor of his daughter, Erin, who died by suicide. And he is a great guy, so I'm excited to have him on board today talking to us.
My pleasure, Heidi.
Yes, thank you, Bob. I call him Coach Bob.
Everybody else does too.
And then next to us is Debbie Rambis, who does this work in honor of her son, Tony, who drowned at the age of 29 years old. And Debbie is currently our executive director for the Compassionate Friends. As I said, she served with me on the board of directors at Compassionate Friends and was a chapter leader and regional coordinator for the Compassionate Friends. They have both been very involved helping bereaved families find hope after loss. And it's really my honor to have them on today.
Yeah.
Ours too.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's get into it. I want to start with you, Bob, because as the coach, what do you think about this peer-to-peer thing? I mean, you've probably seen it in coaching too, and what's your thought about it?
Well, I think it's great for adults. I mean, my peer-to-peer experience basically saved my life. And then, and then the young people, peer-to-peer is incredibly important. I remember when my daughter died, my son was, I think, 16 at the time. I didn't see him for 2 or 3 days. He was with his friends. He wanted to be with his friends, and it was critical for him. And so that's why a lot of the outreach that I do is to high school students, because they're dealing with so many things that nobody ever talks to them about, and try to make a difference. Just try to make a difference.
Can you tell us about your first experience going to the Compassionate Friends meeting and how that felt to you with the peer-to-peer?
It was 31 years ago, so my memory is, but I remember going, and I know on previous shows I've heard about the kick in the stomach kind of thing. I've never felt anything like that. But my first experience at the Compassionate Friends, I couldn't say my name. I cried, and I couldn't talk. And it took about 3 meetings, I think, before I was able to open up. And then it took another probably 6 months before I could say the word suicide. You know, I mean, that's something that is different, I think, in that type of death, where people get very judgmental about that.
So you felt a safe space?
Finally, yeah, it was. It felt to be, and it turned out to be a very safe space, and it is for everybody who comes to the meetings. It's it's the only place where you can talk about your child, and people understand, and they don't mind talking about your child and their child.
Yeah.
I remember, of course, I went back to work within 3 or 4 days, and I remember being asked, you know, how's your wife doing?
Yeah.
Not how you doing.
Wow.
Ever.
Nobody wants to see a guy cry, right?
And you know, I mean, you got 3 days. Okay, now it's back to get. And then I remember also talking to a person I'd worked with for 15 years, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm not having a very good day. I'm really struggling." He was gone.
Wow.
I mean, where'd he go?
Yeah.
Right.
And I also remember, and I don't know if any of you experienced this, all of a sudden, your child died, and it's like, I don't want to catch it, so
Yes.
I'm not going to spend that much time with you or be that involved with you.
And also there might be an idea that they could have a child die.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I'm
contagious.
saying.
Right.
It might be catchy.
Well,
Yeah,
I
catchy,
remember
right.
people avoiding our family and not making eye contact and kind of moving away. And I remember my parents got a puppy just because they wanted something to love on in the house. And I remember it brought people towards us because they wanted to talk about the dog. You know, because like you said, yes, even my friends would try to avoid me. I felt like everybody was diverting their eyes and trying to avoid me. And God forbid they mention the fact that, you know, my brother had died, because that didn't come up. I don't know if they thought maybe if they don't mention it, we'll forget. We'll forget that we had a loss.
Exactly.
How about going to the supermarket and pushing your cart along and seeing somebody across the vegetables running the other way? Yeah. Well, Debbie, unlike Bob, he was in Southern California, and there was actually a Compassionate Friends group there, right?
Yeah.
A peer-to-peer support group.
Yeah.
But tell us about your son died, and you were.
Yeah, you know, just like everyone else, we were at a complete loss, didn't know what to do. We tried some therapists, we tried some group therapy, and we got kicked out of one group therapy.
Wow.
Yes, well, you know, kicked out kindly. The therapist said afterwards maybe I wasn't ready. You know, a whole nother story, but I learned about Compassionate Friends, and I thought this is going to be it. I need to be with other people that get it, that understand what it is to lose a child. And so I called. I worked up the courage to say, my son died, and that's so hard to do.
So you called the Compassionate Friends. How did you find out about him? How did you see it?
On the website, there's a chapter locator, and all you have to do is put in your zip code. And it brought up one in Savannah. So I found the number and I called.
So you Googled death of a child?
Yeah, I Googled, you know, just death of a child, Compassionate Friends. I was searching everywhere. And when I called, the lady was very nice, but she said, I'm sorry, there isn't a chapter. And honestly, at that point, I decided I would do everything within my power that no one else would get that answer, because it was so devastating, you know, because I just didn't know where to turn. But then we went to a national conference and we learned how to start a chapter. I'm not saying we learned how to do it correctly, but
I love what you said, because it's non-denominational and it doesn't have a religious bent to it at all. And you started your first meeting with a prayer.
Yes, I didn't know any better. You know, and it. I know, Bob. I wasn't supposed
Bob's
to.
looking at her like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah, and not to make light of it, but for a lot, that wouldn't have worked for me because
Right.
for a long time I was so angry at God.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that's why we to be as inclusive as
Yes,
possible.
which I love that about the
Yeah.
Compassionate Friends. It's not political, it's not religious, it's inclusive.
Yes.
I mean, if you've had the death of a child or a grandchild or a sibling, you are going to be welcome there.
Yes.
With the peer support.
Yes.
Yes.
The peer support.
Yes.
Well, I want to show a little video clip now. Heidi, do you want to introduce the clip we're going to see?
Yes, you all know her. It's Jackie Edwards Mitchell, and she did a 1-minute clip about how the Compassionate Friends changed her life and saved her husband's life.
After she had 2 boys.
She had 2 boys drown, Kareem and Kevin, and talks about going into a home and all of a sudden it being very quiet and her not knowing how she was going to survive the death of both her sons at the same time.
Wow.
So let's watch that video.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jackie Edwards Mitchell. I am Kareem and Kevin's mom. Kareem and Kevin died on June 30th, 1994 in a drowning accident. We heard about TCF immediately after their deaths because I was told that my husband was going to need the Compassionate Friends, which is absolutely the truth. Compassionate Friends saved my husband's life. It saved our life. We wouldn't have been able to survive without it. Having to come home to an empty house after having 3 children running around every day was not easy. My TCF family taught me how to do that. TCF made us strong again. It made my husband strong again. It made us functional again. It taught us how to survive. It taught us how to live. And it taught us how to keep our sons alive, even though they weren't physically here anymore. So I would say to any new parent, just go to meetings. Keep going to meetings. It will make you stronger. It will keep your child alive.
Wow, that was a really powerful show, Mom. A powerful YouTube. And one of the things I think that's interesting, and I want to talk to Bob about this, is that Jackie talks about how the Compassionate Friends saved her husband.
I know, I thought that was really interesting. The focus was on
Was
her
him.
husband. She said it saved her husband's
Saved
life.
John's life. And I want to ask you, Bob, about that, about what do you think that the Compassionate Friends does for men?
Well, I think it breaks down the stereotype of you're not supposed to cry or be emotional or those types of things. And if you're ever at a conference or if you're ever in a meeting with other men, now interestingly enough, the ratio is about 5 to 1.
Yeah.
When you go to a meeting,
Female to male.
Yeah.
5 to 1, yeah.
Yeah, and it helps because it's a safe place. Nobody's going to judge you if you break down or if you get angry or whatever.
Right.
And so and it's sometimes some of the wives have to drag these
Well,
guys.
that's what I was going to ask you. What about all the wives out there that are watching the show and say, I really want to get my husband to go. How do I do it?
Well, coercion, probably.
Withdrawal.
Exactly. It's, you go or else. But I think I would say just encourage and let them know there's other men there.
Yeah.
Better make sure there are.
Yes.
Because if he walks in and he's the only guy there, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
And once he gets there, I think that comfort zone will work its way in, and depending on his personality, some men are not, they're not open to that.
Right. Right.
And they grieve completely differently than their wives.
How is it different?
I don't know. It's like they're not as open about it. I think one of the things that happens is they grieve at a different time in a different way. He's having a bad day or good day, she's having a bad one, and it's hard to get a balance.
And then you're really mad.
Yeah.
When you're trying to get a good day going.
Yeah, because
and so, but and I think it goes back to the cultural thing where,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, men are taught to walk it off, suck it up. Big boys don't cry. And we wrote a book, and maybe you were going to say this, with an NFL quarterback for the Detroit Lions, a former one, Eric Hipple. And it's called Real Men Do Cry. And I love this because on our break, Bob says to me, I can't believe I got emotional when I was introduced. And I love that you did, because you're a coach and you are a guy's guy. And here you are, you're able to go to that place and say, yeah, I lost my daughter, Erin, the love of my life, and this is emotional. And I think it's important because it's an important model for men out there that it's okay, and it takes a lot of courage to show emotion, and it's okay because we have given guys a lot of messages.
Yes.
You know, to suck it up and to repress their grief and to hold it down. And I've noticed that the compassionate friends, that men, mom, they like to be doers, right? They like to do things.
Yeah, they like to fix stuff, which is great.
Yes.
I was going to say that there's a guy in our chapter who is, we're at a church, and he's always replacing light bulbs and everything for the pastor and fixing things up. And he's in the background working on the church while, you know, kind of listening. And the thing.
I think that even from a societal standpoint, men are the fixers.
Yes.
Women are the nurturers.
Yeah.
And when your child dies, I couldn't fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that,
I see these guys with their arms around their wife crying, and you can see that it's just killing them not to be able to do anything for them. Debbie, I wanted to ask you, we were talking about the peer-to-peer support. Talk about some of the things that you've done in your chapter and some of the things that you teach.
Yeah.
Because there's some kind of interesting.
Yeah, you know, and it speaks to the men as well, because it's hard for any of us really to talk about our grief. You know, how are you feeling today, Bob? You know, he may just say, okay. But we've done some things like safety equipment. You know, people would come in, and Mark and I would have hard helmets on. We would have safety vests on and work boots, and that was our meeting idea. Was, you know, what is your safety gear for grief?
no helmets and shoulder pads.
And you can do that in your
Football equipment,
Yeah, I
Bob.
mean, there's
It's a great
equipment and
idea.
there's equipment.
I love it.
Right. And, you know, we've done other things like all of our group would wear mustaches, those plastic mustaches, and it would be, I mustache you a question. And then we'd break into small groups. But it provided us some levity, but yet we could really get at talking about, you know, what we were feeling. So we've done a lot of different things. And, you know, we've got on Facebook a Men in Grief group.
I like
No
that.
women allowed.
I like that.
And my husband is one of the moderators there. And so, you know, they...
And I love that your husband moderates, because your husband is a career military.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
Army, airborne ranger. So again, he's a guy's guy, and you know,
Yeah.
we need those voices. We need
Colonel.
those guys in there.
I think that one of the things that she was talking about is you think it's at the first point you'll never laugh again.
Yeah.
And I think, as you well know, I'm a little bit of a jokester,
Yeah.
but it's fun sometimes to talk about in a meeting about a good memory that you have of your child, and usually it's something really funny or cute to you, and you get a good laugh, and you're able to laugh again, but it, you know, it goes up and down. You have your good days, your bad days.
Well, and you're bringing up a good point about laughter, because it's a safe place to be able to laugh. When we're with people that have had similar losses, it's okay to laugh. Sometimes out in the real world, it's weird to laugh because people are kind of looking at us going, why are they laughing? I thought her brother died. She seems like she's over it now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of weird because sometimes you feel like you're being observed and judged. So it's nice to be able to, like you said, let down.
You don't get over it.
Exactly.
It's a new norm.
Exactly.
Okay?
You learn to live with it.
Exactly. And you don't think about your child every minute of every day, but there's not a day go by I don't think about her. But a lot of the time it's very happy memories.
Yeah.
So, you know, you evolve, I think. I mean, I feel like a farmer's insurance. I know a lot because I've seen a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And so people who are newly bereaved, give it a chance.
That's good.
You know, because sometimes the first, the second, the third meeting, you think, oh, this is not for me. But I think at some point, you realize, this will work for me if you give it a chance.
Yeah.
So, how do I, if I'm watching this, how do I find out if there's a chapter in my area?
If you go to compassionatefriends.org, there's what's called a chapter locator there, and you can simply put in your zip code, and it will bring up the locations of the chapters nearest you. You can put specifications like how many miles away, and then you'll get an idea. In some of our larger metropolitan areas, we may have, like in Houston, for example, we have 8 chapters there.
Wow.
We have many members that go to more than one chapter meeting because each one's different.
How often are the chapter meetings?
Generally once a month, but oftentimes our chapters they'll have a formal meeting, but then they'll also have like a breakfast or a dinner sometime, and more of a social time together.
What if there's not a chapter in my area?
And we
That
have
happened
over
to you,
600. It happened to me, yeah. So you can always start a chapter, but even if you can't, we have a presence online so that you can get online different types of groups for the type of loss, the age of your child, and you can join those groups on Facebook. If you're not a Facebook fan, we have chat rooms every day of every week, different times. Again, going to our website, you'll learn when those chat rooms are.
And you like the sibling one, right?
I do.
Yes.
Sons of the Siblings Facebook page. It's got thousands of members. It's a closed Facebook page, so the only people that are on that are bereaved siblings. You can join, but you have to be a bereaved sibling, and we make sure that there are no parents there.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's a wonderful place to go and be honest with what's going on in your life, and vent and get acknowledgement and get validation and say, my parents are driving me crazy.
Yes.
No offense, parents. We're not saying that about you behind your back. So what about Bob? I'm wondering.
That was a good movie.
Speaking, yes, that was a good movie. What about Bob? Speaking. I know you do a lot with suicide prevention. I know you've spoken to over 200,000 kids. You know how to reach these kids. You coach these kids. You know how to talk their talk and to really be there for them. And I know you have many, many stories of lives you've saved, of kids that have come up in confidence and said, look, I'm struggling. I'm not in a good place.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you if they want you to speak at a school or an event?
Well, just having moved from California to Phoenix, rather new, but right now the only way to get a hold of me would be my cell phone, and I have no problem with people having it. It's 951-675-4939. I need to start, because I had a lot of interaction, a lot of networking in California.
Yes.
So hopefully that'll happen here. If it does, I don't charge any money here. And I usually brought a young person with me, and that and have them tell their story. And we would have 2,000 kids in an auditorium.
Wow.
And you could hear a pin drop for an hour.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I heard you earlier talking about social media, and that it's really a problem right now. You're concerned about it?
I think one of the worst things that ever happened to our younger generation, it's a good thing, but social media is so destructive. Cyberbullying, the internet with 500 sites on how to kill yourself, those kind of things.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
That's very disturbing.
Maybe more, but it's just catastrophic.
Yeah.
What is out there and what kids unknowingly or knowingly do to each other.
Right. And they can't get away from it. You go home.
No.
Home isn't a safe place because you've got your handhelds.
Right.
So it's 24/7.
Yeah. And I know within our football team, for example, they're not allowed to have a cell phone in anything that starts from the locker room to the meetings to no cell phone.
I love that.
No interaction with anybody. You're focused on what you're doing. Now, the other 21 hours of the day, who knows?
Right.
We try to monitor it. We try to get, their Facebook stuff, or we can monitor it. Don't like invading their privacy, but at times we have been able to save some kids from doing something just horrendous.
Wow.
And of course, I deal with young men for the most part on a day-to-day basis. Young women are incredibly at risk.
Yeah.
And somebody needs to tell them, and
Well,
sometimes they'll listen.
You're needed more than ever right now then. And I'm glad you're out there as a voice and to help these kids and support them, so thank you.
So if you had one piece of advice for somebody watching this show about finding hope after loss, what would it be?
I think finding hope after loss is giving yourself time to find that. Really, initially for me, hope was a 4-letter word. I couldn't imagine hope. What is that?
Yeah.
But it does come, and you're able to see that through others that have been there, so that no one need walk alone, that you're there hand in hand with someone else that's lost a brother, a sister, a grandchild, or a child themselves.
And if there's not a chapter in my area, do you want to talk about the national conference?
Yes, absolutely. Every year there's a national conference. This year we're going to be in St. Louis, July 27th through the 29th. It's an opportunity to be among other people, to celebrate the life of your loved one, of your family member, not focusing on the death, that one horrific moment, but rather their lives, and learning to how to navigate this so difficult journey of grief.
All right. Are you going to be there with us at the conference?
I hope so.
Bob on the spot here, Mom.
It depends on if I'm doing some summer work with the team. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't, at this point, yes.
Depending on
but-
your coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What piece of advice do you have for the folks out there who've had a loss? And your expertise suicide, you can give them a...
Well, I think don't get caught up in the stigma of a suicide. There are certain types of losses that people sometimes get very judgmental on, and they don't know the whole story or anything like that. But I would say to, especially the newly bereaved, don't give up. You don't have a choice. Your life's going to go on, so you have to choose how you're going to live it. You can go into a hole and not have a quality life, or you can reach out, maybe try to help other people get into Compassionate Friends chapters and those kind of things. Anything that keeps you on an upward movement, because when your child first dies.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both
That's
for
good
being on
advice.
this show. It's been great to have you on, and thanks for all the help you give people and all the wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching this show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours till you find your own, and God bless.